Hi, I'm Deb Hunter. I'm a physiotherapist at Move Better for Life and WorkHealth Australia. And this is the second of a four-part series looking at workstation setup. The problems that you get from a poor workstation setup, what's the ideal workstation setup, and what you can do to help. So the first session looked at the risks and the problems that occurred with a poorly set up workstation. Today's session will discuss the ideal setup in sitting. Next time, we're going to look at the standing workstation setup, and part 4, we'll look at the exercises and interventions that you can do to help. So that if you have pain and discomfort, you've got something you can do, or just helping pain and discomfort coming on. So the workplace setup and the landscape around it has changed significantly for many of us, working from home now, and it will probably continue for quite a while. A key element of this is how friendly is your workstation set up for your body. Often a few minor ergonomic changes and adjustments can really change and ease the strain on your body and reduce your chance of aches and pains. So let's go through these few things now. We'll look at the sitting workstation setup. When we talk about workplace ergonomics, we're just really looking at principles. So this is what I'll go through now. They're not hard and fast rules, but they're just principles, something that can give you a framework and a point of reference to work from and adjust your own workstation. So I'm going to share with you now on the screen a ideal workstation setup. It's got sitting and standing. Here we go. So on the left, we've got the sitting workstation setup. On the right, the standing. Today, we're going to be looking at the sitting. And the next session, we'll look at the standing. So let's start with the desk and looking at the height. So ideally, you want the desk height to be high enough so that you can comfortably fit your legs in underneath and have a bit of room to move. You don't want your legs jammed up underneath the bottom of the desk. Ideally, you want to have something where you can move your chair up and down and still have reasonable amount of room for your thighs to fit in under the desk. The depth of the desk needs to be reasonable so that you can adjust where you put your monitor and it's not going to reduce or impact negatively on your workstation setup. So you want to be able to have it so at least you can get your screen at least an arm's length away. And just looking at screen, ideally an arm's length is the ideal position for it to be away from you. So you put your arm out like this, and that's where your screen should be with your fingertips touching the screen. And that's what is considered the ideal setup. You don't want something that's too far away and you're having to peer like this, but again, you don't want it right in your face so that you can't actually see what's going on. The top of the screen is ideal if it's at eye level. This helps reduce the poked neck position. If it's too far down, then what you find you're doing is this, you get leaning forward like this to look down. And that's the issue with a lot of laptops, is that they're not, everything's down here, and it really causes pain and headaches if you're in that position for a long period of time. Ideally, you want it up here. So it might mean you have to put your laptop on a stack of books, or you can adjust it to a screen, which then you can adjust the screen, or you can put it on a laptop rise that lifts the screen of the laptop up, and then you can add a keyboard in, and so you can still be having the laptop up here and keyboarding down here. The angle of the monitor, ideally you don't want the monitor just straight up and down at 90 degrees. It's best to have the top of the monitor slightly tilted away. It helps stop glare and it's just better for your eyesight at that angle. And you want the screen well aligned. Now, if you've got one screen, it's pretty simple. You want it straight in front of you. But you will be surprised how many people have one thing off to the side and they're constantly looking one way or another because the screen's not centered. If you have two screens, then depending on how much you use each of the screen is where you might want them. So if you have one screen that you use most of the time, then you probably want that centered and the other one off to the side. If you use them both equally, then again, equidistant apart, so that you're not always having a bias to one side, and that can lead to neck pain. The seat, the office chair. So your seat height, the ideal seat height is so that you can comfortably fit your legs under the desk, but also so that your legs are around parallel to the floor. Now I'm going to move this screen on to another one so you can see here. This guy here has his legs about parallel to the floor, and he can still fit his feet on the floor comfortably. Many people can't, myself included. If your legs are short, then you will need a footrest just to give your feet some support. And I'll show you the next here. That just gives you a close-up. So those legs are parallel, almost parallel. He can fit his feet comfortably on the floor, and everything's well aligned and happy. So he could sit there for quite a while and not have any issues. I'll go back to, oh no, I'll stay on here, and we'll talk about the seat pan. Seat pan is just the seat itself where you're sitting. And ideally, you want the seat pan to be a size so that you've got about a 2 centimetre gap from the front of the seat pan to the back of your knees, because you can get different sizes on the seat pan. If you've got really long legs, then you might want a seat pan that's bigger than the average. If you're a short person like me, you certainly don't want that, because that's going to cause issues. If you do happen to find that you have been given a seat pan that's bigger than you'd like, and you find your knees are jammed up against the edge of the seat, then what you can do is put a lumbar support behind you just to sit you forward, or a pillow, a cushion, something that seats you forward just to give you a little bit more room at the back of your legs. Right, the backrest. So we'll go back to the other photo. So this shows the backrest. Now, you want a backrest, ideally, that goes up to about the shoulders, as in this, this photo here, so that it gives you support from throughout the whole of the spine. You want thoracic and lumbar or upper back support, and the recline of the chair about 10 to 20 degrees. You don't really want it bolt upright. It just makes you have to work too hard. I mean, the muscles in your back having to work too hard. If you've got that recline, it just helps rest everything. But then you don't want it so far back that then you're having to peer forward and you get that poke neck forward position again. So this is really the ideal position. Also, what we can talk about here are the armrests. You want here, if you have armrests on your chair, like in this diagram here, or this photo here, you want the forearms about horizontal so that the shoulders are relaxed. If you don't have an armrest, and some people don't, you can do what we call floating elbows. So you don't have to have an armrest, as long as the arms are supported or the hands are supported so that your elbows can float freely, but they can be tucked in reasonably to the side of your chest. Right, I'll go back to the first diagram that we had here, and we'll talk about the keyboard and the mouse. So you want your hand posture and the type of mouse that you have, so that your hands are level and straight, so that your elbows comfortably tucked in at the sides in what we call a neutral position. The keyboard and the mouse, you'd like to have positioned so that they're close to your body and your elbows are in and you're not leaning forward. If you're having to lean forward awkwardly, and sometimes we can find that the mouse can sort of escape from us and you find that it's out here, and what that will do is give you an awkward reach. It gives pain at the back of the shoulder. It can lead to impingement, like I talked about in our first webinar, and you can get pain in the shoulder. But the other thing is, it also puts extra pressure on these muscles here, and those muscles are important for typing and using the mouse. When you're in this forward position like that, it makes those muscles have to work harder. When it's pulled back, you can use more of the muscles and the power of the shoulder, and it reduces what has to happen here. So just pulling that back can actually help quite significantly if you're getting elbow or finger pain or shoulder pain. You also want it so that your wrists are free from compression. You don't want them resting right up against the edge of the desk, because then you can get compression here in the wrist and some numbness, which is not ideal. In terms of the keyboard and the alignment of the keyboard, ideally you want the H letter or the H key in the midline of your body, so in line with your belly button really, and which is actually not where you would think the keyboard should be. It means that it's just slightly off to the right, and that's the best alignment, because then it allows you access to all the letters evenly without having to veer off to one side. And with the mouse and arm posture, you want the mouse close to your body, which we've already talked about, because that reduces strain on the shoulder and the elbow. So if you're using a laptop in particular, just make sure you elevate the laptop, either with a laptop rise or stack of books or a box, whatever it is you have around the place. So you elevate it, that will bring your screen up, and you will need to get a keyboard to attach. Otherwise, what you can do is, and this is what I do at home, is I've got screens. I have my laptop, which I can use out and about, but then I just attach a screen and the keyboard separately when I'm at home for long periods of time or at work for long periods of time. So I can then set things up so at the right height and adjust appropriately for me. That's most of what we're going to talk about today in the seated workstation setup. I'll just go on to the next slide here. Before we wrap up, I just want to remind you that the best posture is the next posture. What that means is that you really need to move around a lot. Don't spend long periods of time at the computer. You want to be walking and moving around for about 2 minutes in every 30 minutes. That will give you enough exercise and movement that really significantly helps reduce pain and discomfort that you can get if you're sitting for long periods of time at the computer. Look, that wraps up our session for today. That's a little bit to take in. My next session will be looking at the standing workstation setup. And just a reminder that we do have Facebook. It'd be great if you could like us on Facebook. We have more education sessions on our website and on Facebook as well. I write a weekly blog, so there's lots of information out there that you might find helpful. It's all free to access, and just go and do it and have a look at it. So thanks for listening, and I will see you at the next session on our standing workstation setup. Thanks a lot. I'll see you then.